Sharing and grouping. What is sharing and grouping? Sharing is dividing something into equal parts so everyone can have a fair share. For instance, if you have 10 counters and you want to share them equally with 2 friends, how many counters does each person get? You're doing 10 divided by 2, which will equal 5. What is grouping? Grouping is when we put things together into small sets or groups. For example, if you have 12 apples and you put 4 apples into each group, how many groups of apples will you have? You're still doing 12 divided by 4, but this time you've put them into groups of 4 first and you're counting how many groups you have. In Year 2, children experience division as both sharing and grouping. For example, they would have shared 10 counters equally into 2 groups, but they would have also grouped the 10 counters into 2s. Here is an example of sharing. I have 10 counters. I'm going to share the counters into 2 equal groups. To do this, I will draw 2 circles. I will then equally share my counters into the 2 circles. Once I have no more counters left, I will then count how many are in each circle. There are 5 counters in each circle. This means that 10 divided by 2 equals 5. I'll now show you an example of grouping. With grouping, you already know how many counters will be in each group. In this case, 5. So you would put the counters into groups of 5 and then count how many groups of 5 you've made. So there's 1 group of 5, 2 groups of 5. So therefore we have 2 groups. So the answer will be the number of groups that there are, which is 2. In Year 3, children revisit and consolidate their understanding of these key skills. Children identify whether the question involves sharing or grouping and use appropriate concrete manipulatives or pictorial representations to support their understanding. The concrete manipulatives could be anything from counters to buttons to anything that you have around. Here is an example of a word problem using sharing or grouping. This one will be sharing. Eva has 35 sweets. She shares them equally between 5 friends. How many sweets will each friend get? I'm going to use a bar model this time, and I'm going to look at my key information. So my key information is the 35. So 35 will go at the top of my bar model. That is the whole amount. Next, we look at the vocabulary used and how it says sharing. She shares them equally between 5 friends. So now I know that I need to do 5 boxes. But this does work like the last example where you could do circles. There's my 5 boxes. I will now equally share my 35 sweets. And it works out that there are 7 each. So 35 divided between the 5 circles or 5 boxes equals 7. This time I have 25 children in the class. They get into equal groups of 5. How many groups will there be? I now need to look at my key information, and I know that this is going to be a grouping word problem. So again, I'm going to use a bar model. 25 children is my whole. So that will go at the top of my bar model. I'm now going to see how many groups of 5 I can make until I've run out of children, which is 25. Again, you can use counters, buttons, anything like that to help you. So there's 1 group of 5, 2 groups of 5, 3 groups of 5, 4 groups of 5, 5 groups of 5. So there are 5 groups of 5 in 25. So how can I help my child? Helping your child with sharing and grouping in maths is a great way to build a strong foundation in understanding basic maths concepts like division, multiplication and fractions. Here are some practical strategies to help your child develop these skills. Children often understand abstract concepts better when they can see or touch the things. So actually dividing them, actual concrete materials like objects, will really help them understand what they're doing. So you could obviously have buttons, blocks, action figures, anything really that you have around the house, pasta, anything really. For grouping, again, just get objects, put them into groups of 5, 4s, anything. Just give them a word problem maybe to help them. Story problems are really good. So for example, 12 apples, you want to share them equally with your 3 friends. How many apples do we have each? Again, use those pictorial representations or those concrete manipulatives. And anything like card games or playing games where you have to share things out or group things together is another great way for them to be learning, sharing and grouping. Incorporating sharing and grouping into games and having fun makes that learning process even more enjoyable, and children do seem to enjoy that and learn more when they are having fun whilst doing these things. By using these techniques, your child will get better to understand the concepts of sharing and grouping in maths, and that will obviously help them with more advanced topics later on.